Good afternoon, everybody. Now, I'm recording this on Thursday, but to make sure this has no chance of interfering with the election, I will be posting this on Friday. Now, as I mentioned briefly, actually no I didn't, because I actually left it out because I deleted the video. But basically, Paz put out a video basically saying there's a whole bunch of shenanigans going on with the postal votes, the electoral sabotage and what have you. Now, bear in mind, we've already had confirmation that the presidential election between Biden and Trump was also rigged. Turns out there were people who were saying we're shutting up, we're closing up, and then all of a sudden there was filmed footage of people in one of the states of the US basically pulling out a whole bunch more votes for potentially Joe Biden. And Politico has also made a video, and I'm talking about the one man, not the organisation, that it was proven beyond doubt that there was postal electorate fraud. So it stands to reason why I make a mention of postal electorate fraud, and that, in my humble opinion, whoever gets into power, whether it's the biggest tool Starmer, whether it's Nigel Farage, or whether it's Rishi the Slippery Sunak, which, let's face it, that's not going to happen. The first thing that needs to be done, and I'd even say before immigration for all I care, is there needs to be a thorough investigation for postal electorate fraud. Because if they're willing to do it to Donald Trump, then I am nearly certain, after the Channel 4 hit piece, which I'll get a little bit more into later, and of course the BBC hit piece with the biased audience, it stands to reason why I suspect they do the same to Nigel Farage. But what I find particularly disturbing is the fact that there was apparently a load of paint that was basically smeared all over a Reform van. And it turns out there were some people who are even trying to set that same van on fire. But I bet the mainstream media's not going to cover that, are they? And here's the thing as well. The way I look at this whole fiasco is that, have we seen any Labour candidates or Tory candidates attacked by NPCs, whether it's with milkshakes, sorry, I'm suffering from a stroke. Anyway, people with milkshakes or people with concrete? I bet you haven't. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill. Because say it with me, folks. It doesn't suit the narrative. Why is it only Reform candidates have been attacked? Why is it that only Reform have had to face a political smear campaign from all angles? It begs the fucking question. Like, is it any wonder that people like myself are now questioning the authenticity of this election? Because the way I look at it, as I said, the other parties have not faced this problem. Oh, and here's another thing as well. I know it's going to be in reverse, because obviously this is what the camera's set up as. What I find particularly funny is this that I picked out today out of the fucking bus. You'll notice who's, well, it's on the left in this case, but if you were to flip this over, it would actually show Nigel Farage rather fittingly on the, excuse the pun, far right-hand side of this fucking paper. As if they couldn't slander him anymore. But of course, we all know the Metro is a left-wing rag. We know the left-wing rags don't like to tell that important thing called the truth, and they would prefer to project rather than actually tell the truth. Like, between the attacks on Farage and between the constant slander, as well as libelous slander from other people, is it any wonder that I am very suspicious of this election? And realistically speaking, I suspect Keir the Tool Starmer is going to be our next Prime Minister. The question is, for how long? The only way I want to see how long, or in this case how short, a time he stays in power is if he's forced to resign because it turns out there was electoral fraud, or because we need people like Nigel in power for the time being so we can at least solve the immediate problems. And I know some people are going to be like, you're trusting the wrong man, it's part of the establishment. And as I said, I still have my personal gripes. What he said about us people who attended the 1st of June, calling us knuckle-dragging thugs, yeah, I still have gripes with him about it. But we need him in power to deal with the most immediate problems. Then we can start scrutinising him. But it's a very sad state of affairs when it's down to us citizen journalists to do the job that journalists, or maybe I was right first time, that the journalists / activists should be doing in the mainstream media. But let me briefly flip this on its head. If this was if this was Rishi the Slippery Sunak and Keir the biggest tool Starmer being attacked, I guarantee you that there would be much more positive coverage over it, rather than people ridiculing Nigel Farage and saying that he's basically deserved it, and people advocating for violence against him. Just remember, Joe Brand joked about, oh, they should do battery acid instead, which of course she and the BBC had to apologise about, but that is something they don't really want to talk about. Quite frankly, I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to in their shoes. But here's something else that is going to really piss people off. I'm talking about what happened with Nigel Farage and the Reform Party with that actor from Channel 4. Yeah? Following? For those that don't know, basically a Channel 4 actor who has worked with Channel 4 in the past, who is known for his acting, had to admit that he was an actor after denying it, and is known for what is known as rough speak. And there just so happened to be a Channel 4 crew to record him saying racist stuff and calling Rishi the Slippery Sunak a key. But yeah, we're supposed to believe that is a genuine thing. Now obviously Nigel Farage put in a complaint to Ofcom to say, you need to investigate this. Do you want to know what happened? Ofcom threw the fucking case out. That's right. Ofcom decided that they are going to let Channel 4 off the hook for this libelous campaign. Do you think they'd do that with the Labour Party or the Conservatives? Do you think they'd do that for them? Like fuck would they? They're doing this to reform. They're doing this to reform basically to destroy his credibility. Character assassination. The petty, pathetic smear tactics that you would expect in the USA and not the United Kingdom. But then, when our politicians don't have any other options, I guess I can't really blame them for going towards the smear tactics. You can't really blame the establishment when they don't have that thing on their side called facts, the truth, and impartiality. That's the thing. They'll never take accountability. Ofcom will never take accountability. Channel 4 and the BBC will not take accountability. None of the fuckers will. They would rather hide behind criminal activity and rigging the vote in order to make sure that somebody like Nigel Farage can't get into power and take away the power that they cling on to like it was life or death. And again, that is something the mainstream media will not want to talk to you about, because they know damn well that's the truth. They are abjectly terrified of just the notion, let alone the possibility, of Nigel Farage sprinting into 10 Downing Street. And as I said, I can't really blame them for being scared, because Nigel Farage has the edge as far as using social media is concerned, and for dealing with one of, if not the most important issue this country has right now. And it's not my ability to speak. Anyway, they are basically going after the one important issue, immigration. Do you think that Labour's going to do that? Do you think the Tories are going to do that? They'd rather piss over their own graves, quite frankly. Not one of those pieces of shit in the two cheeks of the same arse that are the Labour and the Tory party even want to suggest, let alone talk, about immigration, because they're all for importing cheap labour at the cost of our cultural beliefs, our cultural way of life, jobs for the British people, housing for the British people, healthcare for the British people. It is single-handedly crippling our nation. It is causing people immeasurable amounts of suffering. And I know what the counter-argument is going to be for this shit. It's going to be Brexit. It's going to be, well, if Brexit wasn't such a disaster, we wouldn't be in this cost of living crisis. No, that is absolutely untrue. What it was down to, it wasn't Brexit itself that was the problem, it was the way it was executed. This is old news, but people keep using that shit excuse that, oh, Brexit was a disaster, when it's absolutely not. It was only a disaster because we were manning the HMS Brexit with Ramonas. If we had Brexiteers at the helm, we'd already be out of the EU, we wouldn't be seeking a deal, we wouldn't be a Brexit in name only, we wouldn't have to worry about the ECHR because we'd already be out of that shit. But again, media won't want to talk about that. And of course, the NPCs on the left wing will also not want to talk about that. And then they'll probably go to the pathetic, generic NPC argument of, oh, but what's his face? Farage! He admires Putin. No, he doesn't. He does not. I do not admire this wind. But hey-ho, he's even come out, if anybody's seen the Farage speech that I put most of it off before it ran out of battery, unfortunately, and you even listened to some of it, you would know that Nigel Farage came out in Birmingham and categorically said he thinks what Putin has done is absolutely reprehensible. He has said that. I've got it on film, and of course my friend that I went up there with can vouch for me on that shit if he wants to basically say it how it is. Nigel Farage does not admire Putin. The closest he got to that was, as I said before, he said that Vladimir Putin had outsmarted and outmaneuvered them, the EU. That's it. He does not admire Vladimir Putin in any way, shape or form, and anybody trying to say that otherwise, I'd recommend getting a checkout from the neck up, because you know damn well it's not true. I think I've pretty much covered what I need to say, so let's just go over it one more time, just for the sakes of convenience, I suppose, or for those who just want to skip to the end and hear what I have to say. Basically, I think the first thing that needs to happen is an investigation into this general election needs to occur under postal electorate fraud, because a lot of votes went missing, and I suspect a lot are going to conveniently come out of thin air for Labour's Keir the biggest tool Starmer. Oh, there was actually one thing I didn't talk about, and that is the idea of Keir Starmer being replaced by Sadiq Khan. I know I've done it in a video before, but that was the other thing I was worried about as far as him resigning is concerned. Maybe he's going to resign and put Sadiq Khan in power. Do you think that's going to be a good thing? If you do, my God, you're in for a real fucking shock. Especially if you're a homosexual, especially if you're a woman. Oh my God, you are going to have one nightmare of a time being classed as a second-class citizen, or even worse still, a person who needs to be stoned to death, or given a free first-class ticket from a tall building all the way to the ground, if you catch my bloody drift. But as said, what this overview is basically there needs to be an investigation of the election over a postal electorate fraud. There needs to be an investigation as to why there was so much smear tactics going on as far as reform is concerned, yet not one thing comes out as far as the Labour or the Conservative Party, which of course the mainstream media will not want to say anything about. Why is it that Ofcom have decided to throw out one of those smears from Channel 4, which basically implies that they are in bed with Channel 4 and are willing to cover their own asses for criminal activity, because that's what it is at this point. It is interfering with the election, which the media have no right to do. And then, of course, we also have the idea that Keir the Tool Starmer is going to be our Prime Minister in the first place. And as said, it scares me to think that he could potentially open the floodgates and put Sadiq Khan in power. A person who has links to people who are associated with the 7/7 bombings. That should scare anybody with even a quarter of a brain cell. I know it scares me. A terrorist, or at least a terrorist sympathiser, in power, in the ultimate seat of power in Britain. That really scares me. I hope that it never comes to that, but we, the British people, must be prepared for anything. And as much as I will never advocate for violence or advocate for people to take matters into their own hands, I think we are heading towards a violent revolution. I don't want it, but I think the cold, bitter truth, which I know is going to upset people like Richard Inman, it might even upset Tommy Robertson, which I am sorry, but I think unfortunately people are going to not have the patience to wait 5 years, in my humble opinion. I don't think they're going to have the patience for it. I think what's going to end up happening is we're going to see some real, genuine, far-right extremists. I mean genuine ones, not the patriots who are labelled as far-right. I think we're going to see some extremists come out from the opposite end, and I think we're going to end up seeing a revolution. Then the army's going to get brought in, which most of them, ironically, will actually be on our side. And then we're going to have blood on the streets. And I can tell you this much for free, that is something I will never advocate for. But I am very, very, very worried that we are in for some very dark times ahead. I only hope I am proven wrong in the years to come.